For most of human history, the most dangerous thing a person could do wasn't going to war. It wasn't crossing an ocean. It wasn't facing a wild animal in the dark. It was giving birth. No doctors the way we know them. No clean tools. No painkillers. No way to stop the bleeding if something went wrong. Just a woman, a dark room, a few people who loved her, and a coin flip with death. And yet, here you are, which means somewhere back through every generation of your family, every single mother survived long enough to pass life forward. So how? How did anyone survive childbirth for thousands of years without a single hospital? The answer is stranger and more clever, and in some places more horrifying than you'd ever expect. And by the end of this, you'll understand something about your own existence that most people never think about. Let's go back. Section 1. Just how dangerous was it? To understand how people survived, you first have to understand what they were surviving. For most of recorded history, somewhere between 1 and 2 women out of every 100 died in childbirth. That doesn't sound like much until you realize a woman didn't give birth once. She might give birth 8, 10, 12 times in her life. Stack that risk up, pregnancy after pregnancy, and the odds start to turn against her. In some times and places, as many as 1 in 8 women died from causes tied to childbirth. Walk through any old cemetery, and you can still read it in the stone. Young women, again and again, dying in their 20s and 30s, and often right beside them, a tiny grave. But here's the first thing I want you to sit with. People back then knew this. Every woman who became pregnant understood she was stepping toward a door that some women walked through and never walked back out of. Think about the courage in that. Not the courage of a single brave moment, but the quiet courage of knowing the risk and choosing life anyway, over and over. So the question becomes sharper. If it was this dangerous, and they knew it was this dangerous, what did they actually do about it? Because they didn't just sit and pray and hope. That's the part the textbooks skip. They fought back with knowledge, with ritual, with tools we'd find shocking today. And the first weapon they had wasn't a tool at all. It was a person. Section 2. The midwife. Long before there were hospitals, there was her, the midwife. In nearly every culture on earth, she existed. And she wasn't some amateur. A skilled midwife in the ancient or medieval world might have personally attended hundreds, sometimes thousands, of births over her lifetime. She couldn't read a medical textbook. Most couldn't read at all. But she carried something just as powerful. Generations of hard-won knowledge, passed mouth to ear, hands to hands, from the midwife who trained her, who learned it from the one before. She knew how to tell when a birth was going well, and the early warning signs when it wasn't. She knew positions to ease the pain and speed things along. She knew which herbs could help labor along, which could calm a panicking mother, and, crucially, which would kill her, so she'd avoid them. And here's something that might surprise you. Some of what these women knew, modern medicine only rediscovered centuries later. Take a simple example. Many traditional midwives had women give birth upright, squatting, kneeling, or sitting, using gravity to help. For a long time, modern hospitals did the opposite, laying women flat on their backs. And only recently did doctors start admitting the old way often had real advantages. So who was really behind the times? It's not as simple as we like to think, but I don't want to romanticize this. Because for all her skill, the midwife was walking into battle with one hand tied behind her back, and the enemy she couldn't see was the one that killed the most. We'll get to that invisible killer in just a moment, and it's the reason hospitals, when they finally came, actually made things worse before they made them better. Section 3, the tools and the terror. Let's talk about what they actually had to work with, because when a birth went right, the midwife's job was mostly to support, to guide, to comfort. It was when things went wrong that the real desperation began. Imagine a baby positioned the wrong way. Today, that's often a routine surgery. Back then, it was a crisis with almost no good options. Midwives developed techniques to try to turn the baby, reaching in, gently, to reposition. Skilled hands saved countless lives this way, but it was risky, and it didn't always work. For pain, they had what nature gave them. Certain plants and herbs could dull the edges of agony. Willow bark, which contains a relative of the chemical in aspirin. Various herbal teas. In some cultures, alcohol. None of it was true anesthesia. A woman in a hard labor felt almost all of it. In many homes, there was a simple rope or cloth hung from above, something to pull against, to brace, to channel the pain into. Small comforts. But in a world with no epidural, small comforts mattered enough that people remembered them for thousands of years. And then there were the moments no one wanted to face, when a birth truly stalled, and mother and child were both slipping away. The choices that followed were the kind that haunted a village. I won't dwell on the darkest of them, but understand that midwives and families sometimes had to make impossible decisions in the dark, with a life on each side of the scale. This was the weight these women carried. Every single birth, they held two lives in their hands, and sometimes, no matter how skilled they were, the knowledge of their time simply wasn't enough. But why? What was the thing they kept losing to, even when everything seemed to go right? A mother could deliver a healthy baby, smile, hold her child, and be dead within a week. What killed her? That's where this story takes its strangest, darkest turn. Section 4. The Invisible Killer. Here's the cruel twist at the heart of this whole story. For most of history, the thing that killed the most mothers wasn't the birth itself. It was what came after. An infection we now call childbed fever. A woman could survive the entire ordeal, the hard part seemingly over. And then, days later, the fever would come. And far too often, she wouldn't recover. And now for the part that still makes doctors wince to this day. When hospitals finally started delivering babies, in the 1700s and 1800s, something horrifying happened. Mothers started dying more. In some hospitals, the death rate was higher than giving birth at home in a dirt floor cottage. How is that possible? Because doctors didn't know germs existed. They'd examine a sick patient, sometimes even a dead one, and then walk straight to a laboring mother without washing their hands. They were carrying death from bed to bed, and they had no idea. The midwives in the homes, with their simpler ways, often cleaner, often gentler, were sometimes safer than the trained doctors in the grand hospitals. It took until the 1800s for one stubborn doctor to notice the pattern and beg his colleagues to simply wash their hands. They mocked him. They ignored him. He died disgraced, before the world finally realized he'd been right all along. That single idea, wash your hands, would go on to save more mothers than any tool, any herb, any technique in all of human history. So when you ask, how did people survive childbirth before hospitals? Here's the punchline that almost no one expects. For a long time, surviving sometimes meant staying away from the so-called experts. Survival lived in the old knowledge, in clean hands and careful women, long before science could explain why it worked. But there's one more piece, because surviving the birth was only half the battle. Section 5. It took a village. Here's something we've almost completely lost today. A woman didn't give birth alone, and she didn't recover alone. When a baby came, the women of the community closed in around her. Not just the midwife, but mothers, sisters, neighbors, aunts. They cooked for her. They cleaned. They watched the older children. In many cultures, there was a sacred period after birth, weeks, where the new mother did almost nothing but rest, heal, and feed her baby, while everyone around her carried the load. Scene. Clay grandmother rocking a newborn while the mother sleeps. This wasn't a luxury. It was survival strategy. A mother who rested, ate well, and stayed warm was a mother who lived. A mother forced back to hard labor too soon was a mother who often didn't. And the knowledge flowed in that circle too. The young woman having her first child was surrounded by women who'd done it 5, 8, 10 times. Their calm was medicine. Compare that to today, where a new parent can come home to an empty apartment and silence. We gained hospitals and medicine, and somewhere along the way, we lost the village. There's something in that worth thinking about. So when you add it all up, the skilled midwife, the hard-won knowledge, the herbs, the upright births, the clean hands some of them kept by instinct, and the whole community wrapping around mother and child, you start to see the real answer. They survived because survival was never one thing. It was a web, 1,000 small pieces of knowledge and care, woven together over thousands of years, each one bought with the lives of the women who came before. Close. Tie it back. Let's come back to where we started. A dark room, a single candle. A woman facing the most dangerous thing a human being could do. She didn't have a hospital. She didn't have machines or surgeons or medicine the way we do. But she wasn't helpless, and she wasn't alone. She had thousands of years of knowledge standing behind her, carried in the hands of the woman at her side. She had her community around her, and she had something harder to measure, the simple, staggering will to bring life into a dangerous world anyway. Every person watching this is the end of an unbroken chain. Thousands of mothers in thousands of dark rooms who faced that risk and won. If even one of them, anywhere back in your line, had lost that coin flip, you wouldn't be here. So the next time childbirth feels like something modern and routine, remember what it cost to get here. Remember the midwives history forgot, the village that vanished, and the simple idea, clean hands, that took us thousands of years to learn. They survived so that we could, and that is a debt worth remembering. Outro, if this made you see your own existence a little differently, that's exactly why this channel exists. We dig into the parts of human survival the textbooks skip. So here's my question for you, and I read the comments. Which forgotten survival skill from the past do you think we'd be lost without today? Drop it below. And if you want more stories of how people survived the impossible, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.